Good afternoon, everyone. Can you hear me in the back all right?
Yep.
Yep.
Very good, okay. Well, I'm very honoured to be here again, and it's very nice to be on platform with Bill. I'm going to talk about the demographic background to the immigration issue. I think I'm going to try to finish by about, I have 10 minutes?
Fine.
Very good, okay. Now, I'll just start off by saying that, yes, I know this is difficult and just had this terrible election result. I was thinking I'd be talking about, will Labour take us back in the European Union? But I think that doing something like that requires some organisation, some strategy, some thought, and all the issues, the costs, and we have single labour market. Frankly, I don't think the Labour government is capable of serious thought, and so we don't need to worry about that. I'll state one thing, something in that Labour, which is in my view, it's a one-term Labour government, so that we are, when we elect from the four remaining candidates, when we elect that, we're electing the next Prime Minister. And I think I think we have two excellent candidates. One is Kenny and the other is Robert Jenrick. I'm not sure how I'm going to vote, but I think they're two fantastic candidates, and maybe we're lucky in this party to have people of that sort respectively leading us. Great. And they're both very sound, I think, on these issues that we're talking about at the moment. Now, I'm a baby boomer, and so I grew up, in fact, I was born in 1951, and I grew up in the 50s and 60s. And I always thought that Europe, okay, the United States was the most important nation in the world, but Europe was the center of the world. Not least because there are lots of people there. And so, let's just go through this. We had at that time, in Britain, we joined the then market in 73, 50s and 60s. This is 1960, and it's the number of people in European Union plus the UK. There's a few more people in Europe than that, but and you can see that there were more people living in the European Union and Britain than there were in Africa and the Middle East combined. They, of course, were our closest geographical neighbours. And at that time, of course, Europe was much richer. And I remember my family went to South Africa in 1959. Going by plane was so expensive, we went on a ship. Jets were just so expensive you couldn't possibly. The notion of you could fly from Cairo or Benghazi or something like that to an airport in the European Union for $100, inconceivable. So immigration wasn't really an issue at that time. I've just been in Germany, and I gave a talk to some friends, 50th wedding anniversary, in fact, and in this Schloss castle where I was talking, there had been the same people there, same family, for 587 years. Piece of land, this castle, and so on, building. And so I told them that the society, following Burke, we built, society was a contract between generations. Well, ladies and gentlemen, let's fast forward. We have two fast forwards. The first fast forward is to last year. These are all figures, by the way, from the United Nations. And you can see there is the population of Africa and the Middle East, and there is the population of the European Union and the UK. I've split up, by the way, between the UK, which had about 70 million people last year, and the EU, which had about 450 million people. And you can see that Africa and the Middle East had getting on for 1.8 billion people, 1,800 billion people. So there's the first fast forward. Then the second fast forward is to 2050. These are all numbers from United Nations, by the way. Their projections. But, much of this is, in a sense, preordained because we know how many children women have. We know how many women there are at the moment. So this is pretty certain. Again, you get further out, it gets more uncertain. And you can see that the expected population of Africa and the Middle East is 6 times that of Europe and the UK combined. I have grandchildren, they'll have grandchildren, I hope. One kind of thinks these generations come. Oh, God. I mean, this is a different world. And you know, nowadays, getting on to, I mean, the poor people have to get in votes, but many of them don't, they're legal. They get the plane. There's 6 times as many coming up in a generation or so's time as there are in Europe and Britain. So, of course, this is a dominant issue, not just here, but across Europe. It's a difficult issue, and you know, I sort of don't want to get sort of accusations of racism and other rubbish go around. One of the great things, by the way, about Kimmy is that she can't be accused of that. And so it's a difficult subject. I guess I can say 2 things with some confidence. One is that the imbalance between these 2 population totals will affect the prominence of this topic in the public space. It's pretty obvious. The second one is that the degree of political disorder in the Middle East and Africa will also affect that. We know very well that these boats are full of people from places like Eritrea, which are ghastly places, and Libya, which has had its many problems and basically split up into 2 nations at the moment. It's really shocking developments in the last 18 months or so in Sudan, which actually appears that crisis is worse than any that we've had in the last 10 years or so, in 10, 20 years in Africa and the Middle East, and even bigger than what's in Syria and so on. Well, that's all I wanted to say in a sense, but I just want to say that we are, I think, being outside the European Union, we have some freedom of action on this topic, on this very difficult subject, and that we are not being told what to do by the Council of Ministers and by the foreign bureaucracy. We have to work with them. We can't avoid that. Can I just say one thing very quickly, which is that I'm afraid, I'm sorry, I was appalled by our relationship to Iran. Just appalled. This is Britain dealing with Kagame. I mean, ghastly. My view is we have to be very frank about this with Africa and the Middle East. Look, sorry, that these places are not being governed properly. You know, Saudi Arabia, why don't you open up your lands to these people? They don't, you know. They're brutal to them. They keep them out like that, just by sheer brutality. I think, what I'd say is you have to tell this whole, basically, we want chunks of Africa, as we used to have, Hong Kong arrangements. They should be governed by us, America, the European Union and so on, decently, the refugees looked after, under UN auspices. That's what I'd like to us be in favour of. I haven't worked it out, I'm afraid, Barry, but that's what I'd like us to do. And I'd like us to be, therefore, to lead a sort of campaign for this kind of thing, to be very open. Sudan is not going to be sorted out by money from the Emirates and Russia, and with Russia getting involved with what there was a base there. What world are they living in? I'm sorry to end on that, Barry, but so I think that in some ways we're very well placed in Britain, because I think we're going to have conservative government still than people expect, and I hope to be a great one. Thank you.